obviously Governor Sterling last week. That was
Good morning from Perth, Western Australia. Today I am bringing you on another self-guided walking tour of Perth city centre. The name of this self-guided walking tour is called Fighting for Rights and Recognition. This walk is developed by the City of Perth's Tourism Division. On this tour we will learn about a time when Aboriginal people were evicted from their homes. We will also hear about their fight to gain land rights. This 2HR walk starts at the Cultural Centre, goes through the CBD, Central Business District, via Murray Street and the Supreme Court Gardens, and ends on Barrack Street. Perth has always been a place where people come together. Before the arrival of white settlers in 1829, the Noongar people met in camps to eat, trade and connect. However, as settlers built nearby, they pushed Aboriginal people to the city's outskirts. From 1927 to 1954, Aboriginal people were not allowed to enter the CBD without a special pass. Despite this, Aboriginal culture and identity stayed strong. Today, Aboriginal people continue to fight for their rights and culture. By sharing this part of Australia's history, we help pass down this knowledge to future generations. One Perth Cultural Centre taking Aboriginal culture to the world. The Cultural Centre is where the theatres, Western Australian Museum and Art Gallery are located. This area also honours the contributions of Aboriginal people to the city's culture. The Aboriginal people's efforts to share their culture and aim for excellence are evident here. Aboriginal artists are celebrated in the Art Gallery of Western Australia. The gallery has many key works, such as Wangkul Junction, Woolunkuya, 1988, by Rover Thomas. The gallery also hosts the Rainbow Serpent, 1983, by Shane Pickett. From the Perth Cultural Centre, we turn back towards Perth train station. The 422 metres walk route cuts through the popular Forest Place pedestrian street. 2. The Prohibited Area, 1927 to 1954. In the 1920s, the Chief Protector of Aborigines, A.O. Neville, wanted more control over the movements of Aboriginal. Using the 1905 Aborigines Act, Neville made Perth a prohibited area. This made it illegal for Aboriginal people to enter the city unless they had a job. The prohibited area was centred at the corner of Murray Street and Barrack Street. From 1927 to 1954, Aboriginal people needed special permits to enter the city. If an Aboriginal worker was still in the city after 6 p.m, the police could arrest them. This made life very difficult for Aboriginal people who needed to work or travel. 3. The Aboriginal Protector's Office. The government controlled almost every part of Aboriginal people's lives then. This control extended to where the Aboriginal people could live, who they could work for, how much they were paid, and even who they could marry. many Aboriginal children were taken away from their parents, which caused great suffering. This system of control was run from this Aboriginal Protector's office at 57 Murray Street. The worst period was from 1915 to 1940, when A.O. Neville was in charge. Neville controlled every detail of Aboriginal people's lives, even approving what they could spend on underwear. Neville also oversaw terrible conditions at state settlements like Moore River, where many Aboriginal people were forced to live. These places had poor living conditions and many people got sick or died. Despite these hardships, Aboriginal people relied on their families and friends to survive. Their homes became places for sharing information and resisting the government. Even though the government tried to separate Aboriginal people and turn them into cheap labour, the Aboriginal people's identity, culture and connection to their land stayed strong. Today, the building is under Curtin University's management. Next, we follow Murray Street and walk 443 M East towards Wellington Street. I found this section of Murray Street to be very pleasant to walk through. The buildings in this area are some of Perth's first hospitals and medical facilities. This large Moreton Bay fig tree was planted 1896 and listed on the State Register of Heritage Place. We continue walking along Murray Street towards Royal Perth Hospital. We turn left towards Victoria Street. The next location requires going down and back up a hill. If you prefer a less strenuous walk, you may want to skip the next location. 4. The New Era Aboriginal Fellowship. After the Aboriginal Prohibition era, many Aboriginal organisations were formed. Aboriginal organisations in the 1960s and 1970s relied on Aboriginal people working together. One of these organisations was the New Era Aboriginal Fellowship. Its goal was to achieve equality between Aboriginal and European people in areas like justice, housing, education, employment, health and civic participation. The New Era Aboriginal Fellowship was located in this building, 176 Wellington Street. Today, some international university occupies the premises instead. It was disappointing that there wasn't a description explaining the building's history. From Wellington Street, we trek back up towards the Royal Perth Hospital. This is a slight incline upwards, but it is not too difficult for a person with general fitness. The landscape around St Mary's Cathedral towards Victoria Avenue is also rather nice. 5. Land Rights, the Native Title Tribunal, Federal Court of Australia. In 1992, the High Court of Australia recognised Aboriginal land rights. This led the government, under Keating's Labor Party, to create the Native Title Tribunal in 1993. The Native Title Tribunal in Perth is located inside this federal court building on Victoria Avenue. In the Bennell v State of Western Australia case in 2006, the Noongar people won the first successful land claim over a capital city in Australia. However, this decision was later overturned by the Federal Court of Australia. Negotiations between the Noongar people and the state government are still ongoing. From the Federal Court building, we head north and turn left for 393 metres on St George Terrace. 6. Fanny, Balbuk and Government House. A famous woman is buried here in Government House, St George Terrace. The woman is Fanny Balbuk's grandmother, a Wadjuk Noongar woman. Balbuk was famous for protesting the occupation of her traditional home ground by settlers. Fanny Balbuk was very angry that she couldn't access her grandmother's burial site. She would stand at the gates here, shouting at the people inside. Even when new fences or houses blocked her path, Fanny Balbuk would break through and continued walking the track she believed was her right. Balbuk's actions were her way of claiming her rightful inheritance as a Whadjuk Buurdia Yorga. As explained by Aboriginal leader Dr. Noel Nannup, that was her songline and her dreaming. Fanny didn't care about the new city being built around her. It is a story of defiance and determination. From the Government House, we cross the street towards St. George's Cathedral. 7. The Deanery, site of the old jail. In the 1830s, Whadjuk Noongar leader Midguru and his son Yargan fought to protect their land from colonial settlers. After settlers killed some of Midguru's family, the Aboriginal people followed Noongar law and killed the settlers in return. Rewards were offered by the white people to capture Yargan and Midguru. Midguru was caught on the 17th of May 1833. He was sentenced to death on the 22nd of May 1833, even though there wasn't much evidence. After sentencing, Midguru was executed just 30 minutes later at this site. 2 months after, his son, Yargan, was also captured and killed by 2 settlers. The 2 settlers later claimed their reward from Lieutenant Governor Frederick Irwin. This 1859 house is a fine-looking romantic-style Gothic house. Its beauty, however, is forever stained by the injustice against the Aboriginal people. From the Deanery, we walk southwards for 186 metres towards the next location. We pass through the beautiful Stirling Gardens. Number 8, the Old Courthouse. The Old Courthouse, 1836, was where discrimination against Aboriginal people was enforced. Today, the Old Courthouse Law Museum offers interactive experiences with photos, audio and videos about Aboriginal people and the law during the early settlement years. At first, the Noongar people thought the 1829 white settlers were returning Noongar spirits. After the 1830s, the settlers began to take over the land, killing many Aboriginal people. Doolan Leisha Eats, a Noongar leader, shared a story about this conflict. She said, "The Noongar people couldn't stay on their land, and they couldn't go onto others' land without asking. My people were driven off Kings Park, but the settlers eventually left after killing them twice." The costs of entry to the Old Courthouse Law Museum is free, but donations are welcomed. From the Old Courthouse, we descend down the stairs behind the Supreme Court building. In just 172 metres, we arrive at the Supreme Court Gardens. Number 9, Supreme Court Gardens. The shore of the Swan River has always been a gathering place for both fun and protest. In World War I, an amusement park called White City, also known as Cooey City or Ugly Land, was set up behind the Supreme Court. In 1922, it moved to the Perth Esplanade. Many people, including Aboriginal people, came to the amusement park here to socialise and dance. However, White City was closed in 1929 after a long campaign by the white people, including A.O. Neville, who opposed it based on moral grounds. Until the 1960s, Aboriginal people were not allowed in most Perth restaurants. Public spaces like Supreme Court Gardens and the Esplanade became important gathering places. Doolan Leisha Eats recalls walking through the city during a NAIDOC event organised by Ken Colbung. She said, "We started from Supreme Court Gardens, walked down Barrack Street and up to Wellington Square. It was a small group, and that was the first time. People swore at us, but now many non-Aboriginal people celebrate with us. From the Supreme Court Gardens we go back to St George Terrace through Stirling Gardens. Number 10. Steps of the Treasury Building. The Aborigines Protection Act of 1905 severely limited the freedom and rights of Aboriginal people. In 1928, a group of Aboriginal representatives met with the Premier to protest against this unfair law. The group included Wilfred Morrison, Norman Harris, Edward Jacobs, A. Kickett, William Bodney, Edward Harris, and William Harris. They stood on the steps of the old Treasury building here to make their case. Although Premier Collier promised to seriously consider their concerns, nothing was done. Number 11. The Coolbaroo League and the Perth Town Hall. In 1946, Helena Clark from Kimberley, George and Jack Poland, who were Yamachi brothers, and a white man named Jeff Harkus, started the Coolbaroo League. One of their activities was organising Coolbaroo club dances, but their first attempt failed because it was in the Prohibited Area. They later moved the dances to East Perth, where sometimes over 600 people attended. Doolan Leisha Eats recalls the importance of the Coolbaroo League, saying, "It was special because it was the only thing happening after 6 p.m. They travelled to places like Katanning, York and Northam using their own money." When the Prohibited Area restrictions ended in 1954, the Coolbaroo League celebrated by holding a big event called the Royal Show Ball at Perth Town Hall. This was an important moment as it marked the return of Aboriginal gatherings to the heart of Perth, the traditional home of the Whadjuk Noongar. I hope you have enjoyed this self-guided walk. For more history about the Whadjuk Noongar people, please refer to my earlier walking tour video.